Keep the toe down. Right, Chris, you're here.
No, absolutely.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
And there
was the perfect.
All right, we almost never start early, but we're going to do it this time. Who knew? People could show up on science places. I certainly didn't. So. Thank you for coming. Although now that baseball is tragically over and there's no Oilers game tonight, it's a lot easier decision than some of our more recent events have been. Audrey's books would like to acknowledge that we are located on Amiskwaciwâskahikan, on Treaty 6 territory and the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 4, the territories of the Niiwa, Niitsitapi, Dene, Nakota Sioux, Anishinaabe, Métis, and Inuit who have stewarded these lands since time immemorial. We offer encouragement to reaffirm our relationship with each other and the land on which we gather, and also to encourage to engage in meaningful action by reading Indigenous works and listening to Indigenous voices. And as we are a bookstore, of course, that in particular, we encourage people to read the works of Indigenous authors. Before we get started, just a couple housekeeping things to get out of the way. We do have a bathroom. If you go to the back of the store, there is a brown door with a sign on it that says, "Stop, please do not enter, staff only." Please enter that door. It is the first door on your right. The door is unlocked. Please do not go any further than that, especially if you enter the construction zone. We may never find you. So, we also have copies of tonight's book, Cruising the Downtown. Everything is upstairs at the front of the store after the event. If you have not already purchased your book and you have been sufficiently persuaded to buy it, line up at cash afterwards, make your purchase, and line up to get your book signed if you like. We're very happy to have tonight's event. We're hosting Cruising the Downtown, celebrating Edmonton's queer history, which extends the work of the Edmonton Queer History Project. As this work has been published by New West Press, I'm going to turn this over to Meredith from New West, who will introduce all of our speakers tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Sarah for starting us slightly early, and sorry again for tricking and being here excessively early. You were all very on time and early. So I'm Meredith Thompson. I'm the marketing and production coordinator at New West Press. Tiny bit about the press. Founded in 1977. We're one of Canada's oldest literary. I just noticed my picture of your picture. Sorry, I'm not going to take the down. No, it's wonderful. Okay. And my nerves. It's just my spiel. Okay. So we're a not-for-profit publisher. We're one of two in the country. We publish literary fiction, nonfiction, poetry, prose, and we are very excited to be publishing this fabulous book. So we are joined today by Rob, Browatzke, who is here as the, I want to say head of the Queer History Project, but
Current chair.
Current chair.
Head is too much power.
And as promised, you did not wear all black, so we're very proud of you. The Edmonton Queer History Project celebrates the people, places, and moments that have helped to shape Edmonton's rich and diverse QS LGBTQIA+ history. You should also check out their website. They have a wonderful interactive map. They have their new map of Strathcona. All the map obviously inspired this wonderful book. Available for sale upstairs. We're very excited about it. It's the first book we've ever done in color, which is a big deal for a tiny publisher.
It was a big thing.
It was. Christine, our financial administrator.
We're very excited.
So we are very excited to have Rob interviewing the two authors of our foreword. Wonderful, Susan and Michael Phair. I won't tell you too much about them because they're about to be interviewed, and I'm sure you will also want to read the book and learn all about it. But the one fact I do want to say about you, Michael, you were on the board of New West Press for many years, and we very much appreciate you. I'll hand it over to you, Rob, and the last thing I will say is when we are done here, there are donuts from Donut Party and sodas from Grizzly Hot Soda upstairs, so please mingle. And maybe, I don't know who can sign this book, because Chris is not here. You can sign it.
Anybody can.
Anybody
Any
can
of
sign
us
it.
can sign it.
It's a collaborative project.
Liz and Michael can sign it.
Do you get comfortable signing books?
No.
Yeah. Then yes, we'll be signatures of things as well. Please welcome Rob.
And when they say color, I mean, look at that. Like that is just beautiful. I have many books. I don't think I have any book with a little gay rainbow on the side. It's very exciting. And yes, I did wear color tonight. Michael always yells at me for always wearing black. I think black is slimming. And then when I wear color, I end up climbing up in ceilings, dismantling Edmonton's current K-bar. And I am now very, very filthy. So don't zoom in. If you are online, you don't need to look at that. We are being joined online by a few people. This is also Morgan Evans from the Edmonton Queer History Project. So when we do throw this open to questions, we will also be taking them from our online audience. Before we start asking Liz and Michael some questions about their experiences with Edmonton and helping form its queer history, I thought it would be a great opportunity just to tell you very briefly about how this book kind of came to be. The Edmonton Queer History Project started about 10 years ago. It started off as an exhibit at the Art Gallery of Alberta, and then transitioned into walking history tours and bus tours, which became a map. And then we're like, what if we expanded on this map and turned it into a book? And now we have a book. And so that you have some idea of what you'll be buying, I'm sure you're all going to want to rush upstairs and buy it. Michael suggested that we do a reading from the book, as people might expect in the book launch. And I thought, what better chapter than the chapter that does include Audrey's? So this is on page 200. If you have a book, you can follow along. But if you don't have a book, you can just listen. In the northwest corner of Audrey's books, shoppers can find the Orlando Corner. Here, a selection of fiction and nonfiction books by and about 2S LGBTQ+ people has existed for almost 25 years. This corner is part of a legacy of queer bookstores in Edmonton dating back to the 1970s. While North America had bookstores like Oscar Wilde Memorial Books, Giovanni's Room, Glad Day, and A Different Light focused on 2S LGBTQ+ people even before the Stonewall Uprising, Edmonton's first such institution didn't come along until 1978. Common Woman Books, Alberta's first women's bookstore, began in Helena Freeland's basement when she, along with Mare Smith and Julianne LeGras, identified the need to make feminist literature more available to local women. This collective run space moved locations a few times before opening on White Avenue in 1981. Advertisements for that grand opening emphasized the space's dedication to feminist literature and non-sexist children's books. By 1987, that inventory was expanding. Staff member Andrea Ansbacher noted that although we branched out into selling socialist and gay men's books, it was still the feminist theory, lesbian, and women's fiction which paid the rent. By that time, Common Woman Books had relocated to 109th Street in the Garneau Theatre building. With the inventory expanded, more volunteers were needed, a bigger board was formed, and the bookstore added the radical bookseller to its name. Volunteer Cheryl Ackerman remembers that Common Woman Books was the first bookstore in Edmonton that used the word lesbian for its section on lesbian resources and fiction. Readings, book launches, and other drop-in programs were just some of the events in Common Woman's lineup of community activities. They eventually relocated back to White Ave, but commercial bookstores had begun to carry more feminist literature. This competition, combined with the usual problems such as economic recession and the introduction of the GST, contributed to Common Woman Books finally closing its doors, 13 years after beginning as a single bookshelf. Freeland remarks that the store was always struggling against people's fear of feminism and political activism, causing the store to struggle to exist right from the beginning. Still, Common Woman's Books' contributions to Edmonton's 2S LGBTQ+ history paved the way for other places to follow. One such place was Orlando Books, which opened on White Avenue in 1993. Jacqueline Dumas opened her activist bookstore intending to carry progressive political books, feminist books, poetry, a good selection of international literature, books from small independent presses, and books by queer writers, of course. At the time, Jacqueline was in the process of coming out and couldn't find either books about that or other Edmonton lesbians. Named after Virginia Woolf's gender-bending bestseller, Orlando Books became a gay bookstore by default. This default was both a positive and a negative for the bookstore. On the positive side, Jacqueline had created the space to be a community hub, and that it became, helping raise money for Green versus Alberta and Miss T versus Alberta, both of which are cases that you can read in other chapters of the book. Participating in the Silly Summer and Pride parades and hosting meetings of the Edmonton Rainbow Business Association in the upstairs space called the Room for Change. This area also hosted readings by writers from across the country, such as Daphne Marlatt, Dion Brand, Gail Scott, Nicole Brossard, Shani Mutu, Patricia Neal Warren, Paula Gunn Allen, Ivan Coyote, and Taste This. The store also promoted events for lesbian entertainers like Chris Williamson and Suzanne Westenhofer. With a group of educators, Dumas authorized Safe and Caring Schools for Lesbian and Gay Youth, a guide for teachers, published and distributed by the Alberta Teachers Association. A University of Alberta Undergraduate Student Entrance Scholarship Award was established and named after the bookstore, with its selection based on demonstrated leadership qualities and involvement in school and community activities, with preference given to students who have demonstrated commitment to the advancement of 2S LGBTQ+ communities. The drawbacks to being increasingly known as a gay bookstore were also sadly many. The queerer it became, the more marginalized it was. Media attention came to Orlando for queer issues only, and seemingly never for the other literary events happening in the space. The store's bestseller list stopped being included in the mainstream press, and the store was often subjected to homophobic graffiti and vandalism. One of the major financial challenges Orlando Books experienced was an ongoing battle with Canada Customs. As Dumas recalled, certain titles, primarily leather books from the US, were routinely stopped at the border. And when that happened, our entire shipment of books would be stopped, which meant that dozens of titles, including customer special orders, could be held up for months because of one title. This problem was occurring with Vancouver-based Little Sisters Book and Art Emporium. They were engaged in a decades-long battle challenging Canada Customs over censorship, which the Supreme Court of Canada eventually found to be discriminatory. It was a fight against not only censorship, but also government-sponsored homophobia, and for the visibility and recognition of 2S LGBTQ+ communities. In the end, though, Orlando Books experienced many of the same challenges other independent booksellers suffered, including the arrival of big box outlets like Chapters and the rise of online book retailers such as Amazon. Independent bookstores around the world were dying. Following the closure of Orlando Books in 2002, Dumas began working at Audrey's Books, an independent bookstore on Jasper Avenue. There she created the Orlando Corner. The February 2003 launch of the designated 2S LGBTQ+ corner featured music and refreshments as Audrey's welcomed Orlando customers into their space. In this corner, customers could find the best in queer literature, erotica, sexuality, humor, books on coming out, relationships, and more. The Orlando Corner continues to this day, despite the continuing rise in online shopping and big bookstores. That Audrey's continues to support and provide a home to the Orlando Corner is a sign of the importance of these spaces for Edmonton's 2S LGBTQ+ communities. The ongoing presence of the Orlando Corner is also a testament to the dedicated legacy of Edmonton's queer and feminist bookstores. So as you can tell from that, this book was written with a very academic lens. A lot of the quotes when I was going like this were not air quotes, they were actual quotes in the book. Everything is nicely footnoted. There are tons of citations. Think of this as a gateway drug to your journey in Edmonton queer history. This is just about downtown. This is just what we could unearth. There is going to be more. There are going to be things that were missed. There are going to be potentially things that were even gotten wrong. We will see. The reviews aren't in on that yet. Because everything was backed up though with footnotes and research, that's probably less likely. But of course, when it comes to Edmonton's queer history, we have Edmonton's queer history sitting right here with these two. So, not that I'm calling them old. I realize how that sounds. I'm calling them very experienced in matters of queer Edmonton. So, we don't have microphones, but I think they can be loud. Yeah. You can both be loud, right?
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we start things off with just a very brief encounter, or where you guys first encountered each other? Like where did the two of you first meet? This is Michael Phair and Liz Messiah. As
I think we first met at one of the early gala meetings.
It must be.
Because we did so much together after that with either the gala pride work or then the civil rights thing.
Yeah.
So there's I think that's where we first met.
Probably so. Yeah.
One of the many meetings that we've attended over the years.
A ton of meetings.
Yeah.
And then networking, remember?
Oh, right, yes. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
We started a networking group called the Edmonton's Networking Discreetly.
Yeah.
And
Club.
yeah. And, we met mostly, I think, at the Edmonton Inn,
Yeah.
which people said you're a gay in those days, a gay and lesbian group, and you're renting room and space at the Edmonton Inn, and it was probably me who said, well, why not? And so we had monthly, I think, meetings with various, sometimes guest speakers, but people from the community just starting to come after work once a month to have a couple of glasses of wine and get to know one another. One of the stories about the End Pub, I think, it's sort of typical, was that we were meeting in a restaurant on Monday night, and we remember that?
Yeah.
And we had a grand time. It was lovely. And the next night, the police raided because it was apparently a center for drug dealing. And I found out after the fact by talking to probably Staff Sergeant Joe Rogers at the police that they knew we were meeting on the Monday night and decided to wait until Tuesday because they didn't want us to get into that mess. I thought, wow, isn't that nice?
Very nice.
Yeah, we were very good.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Gala. Gala, for those of you who don't know, was an organization that was basically in charge of putting on Edmonton Pride in the 80s and 90s. Why don't you share one of your first memories about one of those early Prides?
Well, I want to tell a story about one of those meetings, actually, kind of which you will recall as well. So Gala was specifically political as such, as that too, was an advocacy group. And we started it because some of us, Liz and myself and others, wanted to do more pushing within the legislature and kind of get laws changed and all that kind of stuff against discrimination. And so we did a great deal of things, but I did bring something with me that I thought I would share, because I think we also were serious, and also we had a little fun as well. So one of the things that we did is we decided, and we did a number of times, was to meet with the Alberta Human Rights Commission, with the members of that, to tell them that, you know, the legislation that the province has should be changed. It should include sexual orientation. And the commission was established by the provincial government, and they reported to the provincial government, and they did actually recommend it a couple of times. But in the early days, probably in 1982 or 3 or 4, we did, our group set a meeting with the commission. There was about, I think, 7 or 8 commission members, and then they had a staff member as well. And so we got together and decided, you know, what we were going to say, and then how we were going to be. And that was a time we wanted to kind of impress them that we were just regular Albertans, kind of thing, and that too. So you were there as a social worker, kind of thing, and that. Tom Edge was there, I think, as a bookseller. I was there for whatever reason. I kind of forget. And then the other person that was very active with all of this was a woman who was a grandmother by then. Yeah, Maureen Irwin, who was there as a grandmother, being able to talk about her sons and their grandchildren. And we practiced this as well in advance. You know, we wanted to be really impressive. Kind of, we were young and foolish. Got to do that. So we met in a kind of a round table, and we met. We got together probably 15 minutes before, and that the commission was having their regular meeting, and then would meet with us. So you'll remember now. So I sat down. Everyone was there, and I pulled out my Gold Lame purse and my shoes. And I put them on the table in front, and Maureen said, Michael, what are you doing? You were trying to do, I'm just putting on my Gold Lame shoes and the rest of it. And she was ready to knock me over. But people like Liz and the rest figured out what was going on. They all laughed. And Maureen finally realized that Yeah, I did bring them, but I was hiding them under the table afterwards. I didn't get to. But so we did have some fun as well. And it's a story I always enjoyed kind of telling. And Maureen did eventually as well. But she would always yell, "But Michael, how was I to know that you were just fooling around and I was actually doing it?" Kind of thing that. So we had a good time. But so that was just to impress them. The commission, in fact, decided and did send forward recommendation to the legislature that sexual orientation should be included. It went to the minister at the time that oversaw that, and it didn't happen. They said, "Oh, we aren't going to do that," kind of thing, that too. And the commission actually did that about 3 times. Yeah. We met with them numerous times over probably 8 or 9 years, kind of thing, that as well. And that. So even though I had my Golden Mate purse, it didn't help. With that. So that was one of the, that was a gala meeting, and it was gala that did that, and it just to bring a little humor to it as well. Kind of that we did have a good time, although we worked hard and we did tons of meetings. Oh my God!
Yes. But one of the things that I think helped us continue, because it was very tough times in many ways.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of joking and kidding, and we never took ourselves very seriously. And so I always say to people when they're talking about making changes, if you're not having fun, it's not going to work. You have to do the hard work and the serious work. God knows we wrote enough briefs, and in the old days, stuffed envelopes by hand and licked the stamps and put them on.
Xerox stuff on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh. But
letters.
Yes, but we knew each other really well, and we enjoyed it. We had fun. We ate together. We always had potlucks, and and those were great fun. But food is also very nurturing, and so I mean, one of my favorite potluck stories was one night in January or February. It was zero, it was minus 30 or something, and the police were always paying attention to us. And so we saw the police car drive by. We were meeting at your house. And we saw the police car drive by a couple of times really slowly. And finally, I looked at Mike and I said, "Why don't we just go invite them in?" It's a cold, nasty night. We've got lots of food. And we all laughed. And we actually quite seriously considered it, but by that time they had gone. And had we been able to catch them, we'd have brought them in and sat them down and showed them that they were having, lovely food and maybe a glass of wine and some coffee with some pretty ordinary folk who happened to be, of a different sexual orientation.
And do you want to mention something about New Year's Day?
Yes, well, oh my. I grew up in the Air Force, and of course in the military, there's a New Year's Day levy, which is when, and they still go on, when members of the public can come and meet the lieutenant governor, or the governor general, or whoever. So we decided that, we were pretty well known, and it was an excuse to have a party. So we had a levy I was with Catherine at the time, and in the house, and there are pictures because when you went in the house, there was this long staircase. There's pictures of Michael in his boa coming down the stairs, and me in some formal, New Year's Eve kind of dress, and we had a hell of a good time.
And you kissed my hand.
I did.
And they all did.
Yes, they all did. Yes.
And then we ate.
Oh, of course we ate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other things we did, and the notion of having fun, and for me, this comes from my belief, which I still have, is that, well, if we want to do it, why don't we just go ahead and do it? I never quite got that because I was a lesbian, it wouldn't be okay. I never quite believed that. I was always surprised because I kept running into it, but I was was always surprised. And we decided to have a New Year's Eve dance. And yes, and I was involved with Women's Space at the time, and with Catherine. And she was very efficient, and in no time flat, we had organized a formal New Year's Eve dinner and dance at the Saxony, way out in the West End, the only place that had a room still available. And after the Saxony, it was a great time, we started having them at the West End. Yes. Again, because why not? They want to go to a nice place and have a nice time. And we did it for several years until, and we got to know that the staff wanted to volunteer because we were such great guests. I'm losing my voice here for a second.
So
I just a second. I do just want to thank the people that are joining us online, and if any of you have questions, that would be a great time to get them into the chat. I don't know if it's just me or if you're all as intrigued, but I mean, books are great, but nothing really beats the oral history that we're getting with the two of these together. I could just sit here for hours and soak this all in. So
Yeah.
So I'm gonna I wanted to do say a little bit about a particular one that is on the serious side. And in the book on 139, it has a picture of some of us that are in one of the prize events at that time. I'm choosing that particularly because when you look at it, you'll see that a number of us are carrying on a pole that we had a pink triangle. And then many of us were wearing a pink triangle as well. It was much more of a march, and that this is actually one of them from that time. I can't remember who made them. It wasn't me, that's for sure. I'm just thinking that too, because back in the 80s, as we were talking about people who were gay and lesbian at that time, pretty much sometimes GLB. We sometimes were bisexual, although most of us thought they weren't really bisexual. They just weren't ready to say they were gay, kind of thing. That so I did that all the time. So,
Yeah.
But looking at what we knew from the past, and of course, one of the things that was coming to the fore at that time is as there was more and more history about the concentration camps and what happened in Germany, and in fact. Gay men and lesbian women were rounded up, and gay men had to wear a pink triangle on their clothes that they had, and women had a black. The triangle was black. Yeah. I'm trying to think of that too. So we made these and put them on and wore them at a couple of the parades in the early years. And I think we actually called them marches at that point.
Yes, they were.
Yeah, I'm thinking that too. So there was a serious side of that as well. And then the big pink things were made by an artist here in town, Peter.
Peter Field.
Yeah, Peter Field.
Yeah.
Peter Field made, and they were triangles like this that we painted. There was a group of us that he made the wood and got them ready, and then a number of us. Another meeting, of course, where we painted them, the pink kind of thing and that as well. And I think we must have done about 15 or 20 of them because we had them for a couple of years, and then they disappeared. I don't know, somebody somewhere, and they kind of went. But we held those, and probably by the second or third parade. Then the first parade was. Unannounced is what I kind of call it, is that those are the days before there was an electronic media, of course, and that you had to depend on other kinds of media. And the only way you knew we were going to have this parade is you would have had to seen it at one of the bars or one of the other places that was happening, kind of thing in that. And you probably remember the debate we had whether we would go ahead with the parade, but we weren't sure if people would come.
Yeah.
To that. And we had done a gay day right across from the West End and between the West and the library for a couple of years, and we debated whether to do a parade because everybody else was, of course, and we weren't. And we decided we were going to do a parade. And so we, as Liz has said earlier, and I think you did too as well, the gala took responsibility for putting that together and having it. We started at the gazebo in next to the bus barns, and Lois Holt and her family donated pink petunias that we put on the gazebo. And we had some kind of microphone, and Liz and I led the parade, and we did have a sign that said "Gay Pride," something I think. There are photos of it somewhere. I can't even remember that anymore. And there were probably somewhere between 20 and 40 people that showed up. That, as I said, we didn't know if anybody would. And I have to tell you that part of it was probably the most, for me, the most exciting part of the day. I'll never forget, because I live on the south, this side of the river, when we were over there. I remember driving over and coming around where we were going to be, and there were people there, and I couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
It was remarkable. I was just so excited, kind of thinking that. So, and some people wore bags over their head. Maureen and I, of course, were in the front of this flight, and I don't think we had a permit. And I think it was a Sunday, maybe rather than Saturday, and I think we went on the sidewalk. And no one knew who we were and what we were doing, because there was no way for people to know that kind of thing, that because we had not publicly publicized it at all, kind of thing. That changed by the second year, kind of thing, that because we did put it then, and the media found out about it afterwards, and then got to ask it and all the rest of that. But that was the first year. But that coming around the corner, that time was I had tears in my eyes.
Yeah. Well, I remember you and I standing there, and we said to each other, "What do we do if nobody comes?"
Yes.
And then we looked, and there were people, and we were just dumbfounded.
Yeah.
And again, we just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
And none of us really knew very much about it, how to have a march or a parade.
How many parades did you organize in your life beforehand?
None.
None of us did ever.
So one of the things was that now you're going to have a march or parade, you got to have music. So how the hell do we get music?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I had a bunch of music at home, and I made tapes, and we played that music. But one of the things that I got into quite a twist about was, okay, if we've got a truck because somebody donated a truck for us to use, and I kept thinking, well, we need electricity. So how are we going to organize enough extension cords to go from this thing on the truck to all of the stores so we can plug in? What do I know? That's all I could think of. And the response I got at the meeting was, "Oh, come on, Liz. There will be a generator." And I said, "Oh, so that we don't have to worry about that." I said, no. But again, it was that sense of, well, we sort of know how to organize things, so we're just going to go ahead and do this thing. And it was quite profound.
Yeah.
It really was. It was quite amazing.
And it was essentially, we walked on 83rd, where the gazebo is. We walked to 105th. Yeah. Okay, and 105th turned to White Avenue. Yeah. And we walked on White Avenue to 103rd and back to the gazebo. Yeah. So it's 2 blocks. Yeah. And we were glad we were still alive at the end.
But it wasn't that one, but there was one that we invited Sven Robinson to.
Yeah, that was the second or third one. Yeah.
And we went 6 blocks or something.
Yes. Yeah.
And Sven said to me, "Is this it? Is this all we're doing?" And I said, "Wait a minute. What?" He said, "Okay." Yeah. And so we did that. So it gradually got a lot better.
So part 6 in the book is a history of Pride going back from 1980 and going all the way up to and including 2024. And so that's the history, obviously, but This is the story of it. This is the flavor of it that it just could never be captured in the book. But when you're diving into some pride stuff, you also want to check out the chapter on Centennial Plaza, which is what Michael was talking about in between the Western Library. So I think we have a question from online.
Yes, we do, because my laptop is about to die here, so we'll probably get this one and then wrap up that portion at least. But there was a question here from an Audrey B. Asking, when you reflect back on the history of queer people in Edmonton, do you feel encouraged or discouraged at the progress or lack thereof that we as a society have made in the march to equality?
What was the question?
Do you feel encouraged?
Huh?
Do you
For
feel,
what we've done?
yeah, encouraged or discouraged for
Given where we are right
progress
now.
Yeah.
society?
Oh, we are now. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do feel like we all of a sudden followed back, but not really.
Can't take it away.
No, I'm still, it's, I realize it's challenging and all the rest of that, but as I look around, even in this recently, the number of places that still put flags up in front of their stores, have it on the ground, the number of people who've gotten married and are continuing to get married, etc. It's just hard to think that all of that will disappear. I realize that with this current government, they're picking on a niche group, a small group kind of thing, and if they're successful, I think they'll do more. And I do worry about that kind of thing too, that we can't be overconfident in that as well. But it is a different world for them to be doing this. It has changed.
Yeah.
And I think and currently the Human Rights Act includes that you can't discriminate, et cetera, and that you'd have to do a lot to get rid of all of that kind of thing, that turn it around.
Jane Roll was a writer who came from the States but lived on Galliano Island, I think. And I got to know Jane quite well. And she wrote fiction, but she also wrote a number of essays. And for a long time, she wrote a column in the Body Politic newspaper. And she took a lot of flack because what was she doing, this feminist lesbian writing, in this mostly gay male magazine? And she just said, and it's so true. She said, politics is like housework. Just when you think you've got it done, you've got to do it again. And unfortunately, in the last few years, I'm finding myself saying that and remembering that because it shows up here and it shows up there. And we've got a couple of generations now who have lived a different life.
Yeah.
And who, if Danielle and company decide to, come after us, we're in a different space. And I think it would be fairly quick for us to organize and just do what we would need to do, because we are protected. We are legal. And so we could be asking a whole lot of really embarrassing questions of them should they decide to do that. And I know that the far right is strong in this province, but there's a whole lot of other of us that are stronger, I think. Yeah.
And thanks again to everybody who's joining us online. We'll just be finishing that up right now. But
this is a great time for other